This is Cassie Jaye, and the video you're about to watch is a tribute to her courage. She's mainly known as the feminist who made a documentary about the men's rights movement, and after speaking to a bunch of men's rights activists and a bunch of feminists, she herself was a feminist no more. She was that deeply impressed with the types of issues and struggles men have to deal with, and in contrast, the complete lack of empathy and understanding modern feminists seem to have for their male counterparts. The Red Pill documentary came out in 2016, and there was a massive backlash, mainly in the form of absolutely horrendous reviews in the mainstream media, and on top of that, a refusal by all major distributors to carry it. Most of the screenings had to happen during private events, but even those were often cancelled by theaters. I heard about this film for the first time in 2016. I wanted to go see it, but there was nowhere to go see it. I finally watched it a couple of days ago. 10 years after it came out. It was pretty damn good. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it's basically her as a feminist interviewing MRAs with the purpose of, as she later admitted, showing them to be the horrible people that she thought they were. In other words, she was hoping they would make all sorts of horrendous proclamations, which she could then string together in the editing room and call it a documentary. But things didn't go as planned. People she talked to seemed pretty reasonable about important issues, such as men being systematically screwed over in divorces, male victims of domestic violence getting absolutely no recognition, even though their numbers are only marginally lower than that of female victims, men being systematically expended in wars and dangerous jobs, and finally, a media narrative bias that systematically emphasizes women's issues. There are other relevant issues as well, obviously, but these are the big ones that the documentary covers. After speaking with the men's rights people, Cassie Jaye pulls in feminist voices to act as a counterweight. But that is where Cassie's disillusionment with feminism starts for real, because it is obvious from the responses of the feminists and gender studies professors that they are biased, downplaying data, downplaying perspectives, being quite dismissive, but without really addressing anything in substance. The documentary is pretty much her speaking with MRAs, her speaking with feminists, and her speaking to the camera, documenting her own disillusionment with feminism. Towards the end of the documentary, she attends a number of public events where MRAs try to hold lectures, and she experiences firsthand how aggressive the feminist movements are in attempting to shut down these events. Being a witness to the behavior of these people that used to be her people means she must have been under no illusion as to how her own film would be received. And that's where the courage comes in. She released the Red Pill, knowing full well she would be ostracized by the people that she used to think were her tribe. The film came out in 2016, and it was greeted with virtually unanimous condemnation and vitriol. A 17% Rotten Tomatoes score, compared to 92% from the general public. You know there's something wrong here. When the scores diverge that much, it's often political. But more revealing than the ridiculously low score is this detail right here. Only 6 reviews. Most professional reviewers didn't review this film because they weren't even able to review it, because the film wasn't being shown anywhere. The good old days of cancel culture, am I right? Mad respect to the people who went against the current back in those days. Anyway, I don't want to spoil the film for anybody, but there are 2 specific takeaways that I will mention here. First of all, a fact that I was not aware of at all that shows just how much our news media run on narrative and not on fact. Boko Haram, a terror group in Nigeria. If you watch the news once in a while, here's what you know. They are an Islamic jihadist organization who are involved in a struggle for power in Nigeria and quite regularly raid schools in order to abduct schoolgirls between the ages of 16 and 18. That's what you know, right? Islamist terror groups, Muslims, terrorists abduct schoolgirls. Well, it turns out they do that, but they also commit horrendous crimes against boys. Why do I have to watch a 10-year-old documentary about men's rights in order to learn the full facts about a Muslim terror group in Nigeria. Well, it turns out that's where I had to get the information, not CNN, not any other mainstream news source. The crimes against the boys do get reported, but with much less fanfare. Okay, so that's one takeaway for me. A second one that I want to mention here is just how articulate and intelligent the MRA spokespeople were. For example, Warren Farrell, who's the author of The Myth of Male Power. His path to the men's rights movement was he started out a feminist in the 70s, speaking at conferences, writing books, etc. At the time, he thought that feminism would liberate men from their gender roles as well. When he actually wanted to talk about these male aspects of the feminism movement, and by extension, men's issues, he noticed that he wasn't getting standing ovations anymore. And after a while, he wouldn't even get invited to speak anymore. The feminists turned their backs on him, and he started focusing on men's issues more and more. Compare the intellectual caliber of a Warren Farrell to that of a Justin Waller or an H.S. Tikitaki or a Sneeko, or anybody else really that Louis Theroux decided to interview for his Netflix documentary, Inside the Manosphere. If you're looking for an alternative to Theroux's crock of documentary, I would recommend Cassie Jaye's The Red Pill. It really is the OG of men's rights documentaries. All right, that's it for me. I'm a small channel. If you find it in your heart to subscribe, you'll have my eternal thanks. See you next time.